Hey guys!
Welcome back to another episode of Faith Over Fear podcast. You guys, so I have a life update. Last time I talked about this, I didn't have a job. It was an episode in season 1, the one that was called What Does It Cost You? And I was telling you guys how I didn't have a job, and I kind of explained my process in that episode if you guys want to go back and watch it. But I wanted to tell you guys that I finally have a job now, and the whole story behind it is kind of crazy. I remember that I was praying to God and I was asking him, I was telling him to, like, when it was time for me to get another job, to have someone come up to me and offer me a job. And I prayed that like a few months ago. I remember that I prayed it first and then I prayed it again. I just wanted to be sure that like it was going to be from God, like when somebody came up to me and offered me a job, And then the second time that I prayed it, literally like a week or two later, a sister at church comes up to me and she's like, "Hey, are you working?" And I was like, "No." She's like, "Oh, well, my husband needs an assistant and I was looking at you and you literally looked perfect for the job." And I was like, "That's insane." I was like, well, she's like, "Are you interested?" And I was like, "Yes," but it was just crazy, like God literally answered my prayer literally exactly,
Yeah.
And it's just amazing how he works, because throughout that process, I feel like I could have been like, there was a lot of doubt. There was a lot of things that happened. And there was times where I was like, am I like tripping, or did God really like speak to me? Not audibly, because God does speak to us a lot, but he doesn't, he can speak to us audibly, but he, like most of the times, he just speaks to us through people, through his word, most importantly, and just circumstances in life. But I was like thinking, because obviously he didn't speak to me audibly, so sometimes there's doubt, and I was like, well, am I tripping, or did this actually happen? But then like her coming up to me was just confirmation through this whole season that I went through. It was literally like a long season. And there was days where I was like, yes, like this is the right thing, but there was days where I'm like everything just looked wrong, so I'm like, I was like, is this even the right thing? So it's really amazing to see how like the pieces are coming together,
Yeah.
And I did want to say, like, with that being said, we're going to talk about how God speaks to us, and when he speaks to us, for us not to ignore. Because I remember the moment where I had to decide if I was going to quit my job or not. And I remember that I was like, do I do it or not? Because I was like, obviously, like, I'm going to lose my income and I need income to live. Like, we all need an income, So I was like, do I do it or not? And I was like fighting in my mind, and I was literally at my job when this was happening, and I was like, well, if I quit, I know that God is going to provide. And in that moment, that's where I had to activate my faith, because I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen, but if this is God, and I had like my 3 confirmations already. It was just me deciding, I was at that point where I was like, am I gonna do this or am I not, you know?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, God is literally God. I was like, he's literally God. He can do it all, And I was like, I'm gonna do it, And now I look back, now I'm here, and I'm like, wow, like if I wouldn't have gone through this process, I would not be equipped to even be sitting here and talking to you guys, because in that process is where I learned everything I know, like I had that one-on-one, like all the time in the world to like connect with God. And that is those times are what built me into who I am now,
Yeah.
So it's just amazing how God is, how he works, and we just have to be like open to listening to his voice, because I feel like he is always talking to us.
No, yeah, that's true. Yeah, like I feel like it's always, like very necessary for us to know and to discern whenever it's God's voice. That's why it's very important for us to be able to deep dive into our spirit and to have that activated, because there's moments where God wants to guide us somewhere, and then there's moments where God wants us to stop doing something. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because even when it comes to like ministries, there's things where God is like, I need you to start this ministry, and then there's also kind of like a timeline where he's like, okay, you already finished, you're completed, now you need to go to the next step. And I feel like that's what kind of happened to you, you know, like where he was like, hey, like dedicate this part, you know, and then he's like, okay, that's enough, you did great, and now we're going to take you to a different aspect in your ministry, you know. And I feel like that's something that's kind of like currently happening to me. Like I don't know, like I don't want to get into much details, just because like I always, the way that I always tell Crystal and everyone else, like I love first discerning it with God, and then people that are in my personal life, and then kind of go from there, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, like I feel like in my process, that because like I feel like right now I'm going through it where it's like the starting stages of like, is this God's voice, like am I, you know, discerning things right, am I going based on my emotions? And the way that I'm handling it now is that I'm trying to be like, you know, I'm trying to have an open ear to God. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to, like I don't want to throw at him what I want. I kind of want to listen to what he wants for me. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of like the way that I've been handling is like praying to him, has been, you know, speaking to my mom about it, people that I trust, you know, and then kind of hearing their feedback, kind of hearing like, oh, you know, what they have to say. And then from there, it's like speaking to leaders, you know what I mean? Because I feel like there's kind of like, whenever you want to discern God's voice, you kind of have to see, is it something that's going to push me more towards God? Is it something that brings peace? And is it something that, you know, it's going to, you know, where like people that you trust, like mentors, your family, leadership, they tell you like, hey, this is actually, you know, pretty good. But if it's something where it's not bringing peace, it's bringing more confusion, it's something where like everyone's telling you like, hey, don't do it, then that's kind of like a sign of like, oh, then I'm not being sensitive to God's voice, you know. So, you know, that's kind of like a way that I'm, you know, handling the beginning stages of this, you know, I guess you can say this process that I feel like God is trying to take me, you know. So it's something that if you feel in that same way, you know, read your word, speak to God, listen to what he has to say, and then also go against what you feel. You know what I mean? Because I do want, like, how can I put it? Like, there's going to be some things that you're going to want, but it's not going to be necessarily things that should happen or you should have. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of like navigating your emotions and all that.
I love that you're going through this process right now, because I feel like the way that you put it is so true. Like she said, she's talking to her people, she's reading, and she's praying about it, you know. And I feel like that's what I meant when I said that God speaks to you through people, through his word, you know, and just like connecting with him. Like she's doing what I did when I was going to quit my job. You know, she talked to people about it. She she's praying about it. And I feel like that stuff is really important, because we can't just be like, oh, this is from God and do it and have no confirmations. It's just what you want, you know? And I feel like we could easily do that, you know, like, because we're like, oh, it's from God, you know, and that's how you get deceived, you know, if you go based off of your emotions, if you just jump the cut like really quickly, like that can be really bad, you know. So I feel like it's really important. I feel like this topic is not a coincidence, that because you're literally going through it, you know, so it's showing. And I feel like it explains it better for like everyone to understand what we mean when we're like, God speaks to us through people, you know, because I feel like when she first told me, I was like, no, you know, but then I was listening to her and it just made sense in my brain. And I was like, you know what, like keep praying about it, you know, but I didn't tell her do it because I don't know, you know, but I wasn't like, no, because I remember when I was going through my situation, people were like, no, you know, but I feel like I knew like deep down, like it was a right call. And I mean, part of me wanted to quit, you know, but part of me was like, no, like what are you doing, you know? So I feel like it's just really hard. And I feel like in this situation, you really have to be connected to God. Like you have to be in prayer, you know, of the situation, because he's the only one that's going to give you that clarity.
Exactly.
People are going to say things. People are going to be like, yes, do it. No, don't do it. You know, but at the end of the day, it's literally God.
Yes.
And he will make sure, you know, he will give you a few signs where you're like,
Yes.
oh, you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, it's just important to, like, if you have a situation where you're currently going through, like, don't think like, oh, it's God if you're not praying about it.
Yeah.
You know, definitely pray about it and be awake, like, listen, you know, be open. How do I say it? Don't be distracted. Like, be focused, you know,
Yes.
and keep your eyes peeled. Like, obviously, if you're praying for something like, I don't know the word that I'm trying to use. It's like, what's the word? Be alert. Yeah, be alert. Like, you know, don't be distracted with life. Like, obviously, I mean, God is gonna reveal it to you when he does.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. Because I feel like also I wanted to add with like, who could you ask? You know, I want to go a little bit more in depth into that one, because I feel like we all, you know who, like, technically deep down we all know who we can ask and who we cannot ask. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like, obviously sometimes we want to ask and we want to hear what we want to hear, so you tell, okay, I know if I tell this person, they're gonna be like, yes, you know, do it, or whatever the case,
They're
or
gonna
no, don't
hype
do
you
it.
up.
Exactly, you know. But you have to like question yourself, like, is it something that, like, you kind of have to be like mature about this and be like, okay, so I have to be ready to hear what I don't want to hear.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I know that this person, you know, I see this person that is, you know, being by God, being guided by God. And I see this person that, you know, it's always in prayer, reading their word, you know, you would, you know, you can seek to that person, because, you know, that person won't sugarcoat it for you, won't tell you like, hey, maybe, yeah, no, he's going to be like, you know what, I feel like maybe this isn't for you, or you know what, maybe you should, you know, do this, you know, and kind of go from there, you know, because sometimes there is moments where like, well, my friend said yes, so that means yes, they hype you up, and you kind of go from there. But it's just kind of like, you know, not all friends need to know what's going on, because, you know, the blind can't lead the blind.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that's
a
why,
really good point.
yeah. And so that's why, like, with what I was going through now, I was like, because there would be certain situations in my past where I would just kind of tell everyone in a way, like I wouldn't have that discernment or those boundaries where I was like, you know what, I'm gonna listen to what everyone has to say, instead of like, and then that distracts you to God's voice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you have all these opinions, and you're gonna get confused, the enemy's gonna barge in, and you're not gonna have like that open ear to God. And so the way that I do it now, it's not because I don't trust those people, or it's not because they're not my closest friends. It's just that God gives you discernment of like who you should tell and who you should not tell. You know what I mean? And then there's gonna be some people that you tell the afterwards of it, of like, I was going through this, God helped me out with this, and then this is what's going on. You know what I mean? But there's some people that can help you from the beginning through the process, and then there's people that you can tell about after you already went through that situation. So kind of like narrow down, you know, those voices, narrow down who you could tell, and just kind of have that discernment of telling God, like, who can I tell, you know? And like, some good ones would be, just like I mentioned, is this person being led by God. Like, you could see it, you can feel it, and you just don't ignore what God puts in you. Don't ignore what the Holy Spirit is trying to guide you, and then kind of go from there, you know?
Yeah, and I feel like there's times where you think you're telling the right people and it backfires, you know, but I feel like those moments are important too, because you grow and you learn from it, you know? So if you feel like maybe you don't really know who to go to yet, like, it's okay to make mistakes, you know, but like through those processes, then you will get to a point where, you know, like it like you were saying, they're still your friends, you know, but you know, we all have friends that hype us up and like, you know, they're like, yeah, just do it, you know, but then we have those friends that are like, no, that's not good for you, and I'm just gonna be honest, you know. So I mean, obviously, like, just be wise with who you're telling your things to. Yeah,
that's true. But yeah, so that's why you know, whatever the situation is that you're going through right now, maybe it could be like a relationship. Should I stay or should I continue pursuing this? You know, a job, you know, should I take this position or should I leave this position?
Yeah.
In your ministry, is it something that I should be doing? Should I be up there, you know, in the stage, or or is my ministry down here, you know? So that's why, like, we have to make sure that, like, our spirit is open to God. Talk to him first. That's why, that's also another tip I always like to do. Like, I like to keep it first to God, and then I mention it to the next person, and then kind of go from there, you know?
And that's good. I remember I watched this TikTok, and it was about this guy who he had been saving up like a lot of money for a ring for his girlfriend because he was gonna get engaged, you know? And he said that he saved up all the money and he was like ready to buy it, you know? But then that he felt that God was like, you're gonna give that like as a tithe, you know? And that he was like, what? You know, he didn't know what to do, so he prayed about it. And he said that he talked to some mentors, and the mentors were like, well, you only have to give 10%. You know, you don't have to, like, are you sure? Like, you don't have to give it all. Like, God only asks for 10%. But he said that he knew in his spirit that he had to give it all.
Right.
And I feel like, I guess what I'm trying to go with this is that sometimes even your mentors aren't going to get it, you know? And it's not that you're in the wrong. It's just that, like, your relationship is so deep with God, like it's a one-on-one type of thing. You know, like, yes, it's important to get the output of other people, but at the end of the day, it's God, you know, because I do know that, like, in my situation, there was people that were like, no, don't do that, you know, and it looked a little crazy. Like, why would God ask you to quit your job, you know? So I feel like just if you have that strong relationship with God, like, discern, you know, like, and well, obviously ask for the confirmations, you know, but even if people are saying no, don't do that, and it's like you really, like, you know that it's from God, then do it, you know? Because he said that he ended up giving the full amount, and that God literally blessed him with double.
Wow.
And he got like the ring, and I don't know, it was just crazy. Like, he was like, I ended up with way more than I even started with, you know?
And I'm really glad that you brought that up, because sometimes sometimes God is just going to give you no doubt, that you just don't even really have to. Sometimes we question it because it's like, whoa, you know what I mean? Like, with the money, like, I don't know, maybe it could have cost, you said 2,000, or you didn't put a number to it.
I don't know.
I don't know where you came up with 2,000. Let's just say that it was like,
you're just coming up with your own number. That's funny.
So let's say that was like a good $2,000, $5,000. Like, that can stink. So I think
it was like 12K.
Oh,
okay. It was a lot of money.
Whoa. So that's gonna for sure sting, where you're like, man, you know. And so I feel like there's moments where it's like, you are like, God is just kind of like, why are you questioning it? You know what I mean? There's gonna be moments. So, like, listen to that strong feeling. Something's gonna be really strong that is gonna give you peace, and you know, and quiet the other voices.
And I'm glad you said that, because I feel like I was gonna say the voice of God gives peace. You know, if you're asking yourself something and there's a lot of like anxiety and like second thinking, then maybe that's not God, you know? And we've talked about like the voices, you know, there's our voice that is usually what we want to do. You know, I'm sure that he didn't want to give that money. That's, you know, like, we don't want to do these things. That's our voice. God's voice just brings peace and clarity, and even though it doesn't make sense, like it does, you know? And then the devil is just doubt, like, you know, evil, like, don't do that. Like, why would you do that? Keep that money, you know, buy the ring, you know? So it just, like, it's important to know the voices and discern, you know, ask God, and just, I don't know, because as humans, we're always gonna, like, not be sure, you know? We're always gonna doubt, because that's just what we do, you know? But you're still going to feel it, like, deep down. You're going to know what to do, you know?
Yeah, that's true. And it's funny because, like, this is going to be maybe, it still goes along with the topic, but the reason why I was able to know, like, what 3 steps and what, you know, it could happen, because, like, you know, I think that, you know, this process that I'm going through, it was still the beginning of December, right? So we had a class in Bible college in that December month. And, one of the topics was the Bible and the other one was church administration. And so obviously it had nothing to do with like life decisions. So going to the class, I was already going through that process, kind of like thinking that in my mind already in my prayers. And so like the professor, he was talking and talking, about the subject. And I don't know where, I don't even know how it happened that he started talking about whenever you have a big life decision. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of like, because I had already talked to someone where it's like, he asked me, he was like, how do you know, or how do you know that it's God's voice? Like, how do you know it's discernment? So I answered it and I was like, and he was like, yeah, like it feels like you're going the right route. And then the professor saying like, yeah, like it's something that draws you closer to God, something that brings peace to you and to everyone in your surroundings. And then something that I think the third one was kind of like, your leaders, as in kind of like your pastor, your mom, and kind of like saying like, what do they say? You know what I mean? Because those are the people that care about you. Yeah. And whenever he said that, like he kind of went a little bit deep on that. And I was like, wow, thank you, God, that you answered. Like he literally went off topic to like exactly, because it could have been any other class, but why exactly this class of this process that I'm going through,
And it's crazy because that reminded me of the time where I was at the altar asking God, do I quit my job? Yes or no? Yes or no? Yes or no?
Yeah.
But it wasn't that moment, but it was that day where the assessors were like, we had to leave our jobs. And like, why did he say that?
Yeah, that's true. Know? Yeah, he could have said it at any other service, you know? Yeah.
No, yeah. And it's like crazy because I'm like, what? You know, when you were talking about it right now, it just made me think of that. And it's like, wow.
Yeah, and
like that's how God works.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and it's like God uses people. Like those are moments where like it wasn't necessarily that we were approaching someone to get their opinion. It was just God working, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and I feel like sometimes it's not necessarily like you don't have, I mean, it's good to talk to people, but God will get the message to you. You know?
I like that. Yeah, that's true. One way or another, he'll get the message to you. That's crazy.
Yeah, it is. And also I wanted to say that sometimes in situations like this, like, we feel like we want to sacrifice things, but God prefers our obedience over our sacrifice, And in these moments, I feel like it's more of about obedience. I feel like sometimes we want to do all these sacrifices, but God is like, do this. And that's where we either have to be obedient, or not, because I feel like sometimes we're like, oh, I'm sacrificing all these things for God, but what does it do for you if you're not being obedient to God?
Exactly. Because it could be going back to like the reel that I saw or your situation where it's like you could tell God like, no, but I'm sacrificing for you, but he's like, no, you have to be obedient and go back to work. You know what I mean? Because like you feel that you would be doing something good if you continue it because it came from God in the first place. But sometimes God gives you a stopping point where he was like, hey, like you said, I need your obedience.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Because I could have just been like, oh no, I'm not looking for a job,
Yeah, exactly. Or you could have been like, no, God, like I can continue still serving you. Like you could tell God what you want from him, if that makes sense. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it's like, it's just important to be obedient. Obedience is really important. Even if it's not what we want to do, like I was pretty comfortable not having a job.
Yeah.
But I mean, I knew I needed one too, But it was just perfect how she came up to me and I don't know, like God
just
is
like
just
the
amazing.
way, sometimes that is like a good way, because there is like certain situations where you tell God like, I need you to be this direct with me. You know what I mean? Because like you could ask that from God. Like you were very specific, like, no, God, if this is from you, because sometimes God is like, oh no, yeah, she does need that firmness, because if I do this, or like he knows, you know what I mean? Because like sometimes, like, how they say like he doesn't fulfill desires, like it's more of like, oh, like he saw like, okay, like, yeah, like you said it with faith, you said it with humbleness. So if you ask God with humbleness and with faith, like, no, like I need you to tell me if like a way for me to know that it's from you is because a sister's gonna come up to me and she's gonna say this, because there's a lot of testimonies that say that, where it's like, I told God I need you to do this, like this and this, and it happens exactly how it is. You know what I mean? But it doesn't come with like, God, well, you have to know. Like it comes with like asking him with humbleness. It comes with asking him with faith, where it's just kind of like, okay, I let's see what I can do. And then he does it, you know?
And it's crazy because I feel like when I asked that, I was thinking like, because all I would do like other than come to church was go to the gym, you know? So I was like, someone's going to ask me at the gym, you know? Like I had this whole thing of how it was going to go down, but it was nothing of like what I thought, you know? God had his own plan. And I got asked at church and it was the most randomest thing ever, but it felt so right. Like she started asking me and I literally smiled. I was like, yeah, I'm interested. I was like, yeah, you know? And I was like, wow, like it's over.
Yeah.
Like, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. It was just crazy. Like, and you will feel that.
Yeah.
Like you will feel that, you know? And if you don't feel that, then maybe you need to be obedient and to what God is telling you, you know, because I mean, you had said something about like jobs or like relationships or, you know, whatever, and school even. Like if it doesn't give you peace, like we have to be able to control our emotions in situations like this, you know, because I feel like these decisions can be very emotional, you know, and sometimes we want to do things, we've already said this, but sometimes we want to do things, but it's not of God, you know, and that's when we have to be obedient, even if it's going to cost us what we want, you know? Yeah, so it's just important, like when God reveals something to us, listen to his voice, you know, be willing to like sacrifice whatever you have to listen to his voice, you know. He's gonna like I said, he speaks to us through anything almost, you know, like sometimes it could even be a movie, you know, it just depends. That's like true. It That's could true. Be like that one time I was in a service, you were in Bible college, it was your professor, you know. Sometimes it could be like you could be at a store and there's a like
there's a flyer or something, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you just have to be awake.
Yeah,
you
that's
have
true.
to be aware, you know. That's what I was trying to say earlier. You know how I said alert? Yeah, you have to be aware because he's literally talking to us in almost through anything, you know. But if we're not thinking about it, then we're not gonna see it. It's just gonna pass and you're not even gonna acknowledge it, you know. You have to be aware. That's true,
because that does remind me of like my testimony, how I was saying about my DACA, that I was telling God, I was like, I need it now. And it was there the whole time, you know what I mean? So that's why you kind of have to like let go of those distractions and kind of have, because if you're asking something from him, you know, you have to have that tunnel vision for his answer, you know what I mean? Because sometimes it's already there and God is just kind of like, oh, you're being distracted, you know what I mean?
And there's a lot of distractions, like it's kind of insane. So we need to stay focused, you know, like last episode.
And then just kind of like I wanted to say this really quick. I feel like maybe hopefully this video isn't confusing, but maybe it could be, because we're like, talk to mentors, no, you don't have to talk to mentors, or this and that. Like I feel like the overall message is listen to God's voice.
Yes.
The reason why we are saying so many scenarios, because we want to hit the nail to every single scenario where it's like, yes, you need mentors. Hey, no, you have a discernment where you don't need to talk to your mentors. You know, you have this, you have that, because we really want to tell you kind of like all of the scenarios that God can bring you, you know. And everyone, it's different. Like maybe there's even something that we might have missed of like how we can discern God's voice, you know. But hopefully this helps you out. Hopefully it's not confusing or anything like that, but I feel like the overall message is God first.
Yes,
you know what I mean. There is his Bible, there is there he is for us to be able to pray and call out to him, you know what I mean? So that's why fasting is a good one as well, to shut down that voice of the flesh and your emotions and letting the spirit guide you. So those three things, well, for sure, that is just something where it's like staple. There's no doubt about that. Those three things will be able to help you out to discern and hear God's voice.
But with that being said, you guys, this is the end of the episode. I hope you guys learned something today. I know I did. Be sure to like this video and leave a comment if you have any video suggestions or any comments in general. Follow our Instagram and our TikTok. I know TikTok might be getting deleted soon, but we're on TikTok as of right now. We'll see what happens with that. And also, if you listen on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, if you guys could rate the podcast, it would really help us out a lot. We'll see you guys next time.
Bye guys.